Chapter 46. As he was being driven to the Midway Magnetic Facility, Admiral Brinstock had some time to kill as he watched the countryside pass by. The facility was nestled in the far reaches of the Bureau of Land Management land, located roughly 15 miles east of Sonora, California. The area, known as Long Barn, represented an unspoiled region of America many flocked to during the summer for camping and during the winter for skiing. The vistas and pine aromas made many visitors wish they could live there. Riding in the government sedan with blacked-out windows, the vista that lay before him was the last thing on Kenji's mind. While most would say the first thing he should have been thinking about was the imminent threat to every man, woman, and child, all Admiral Brinstock could think of was how this upstart, this dweeb, this small-minded twit was challenging his authority and not acquiescing to the demands placed on him. The fact that this guy was not willing to play ball was the only thing Kenji had been obsessing about since his last phone conversation with Dr. Marsalis. Over and over again, Kenji recalled that phone conversation and how he had decided Dr. Marsalis had to be eliminated, brutally if necessary. What Kenji didn't know was Jason had been thinking about little else as well. While he was unwilling to allow the Admiral to walk all over him, he was still acutely aware that the Admiral was in overarching charge of the facility where Jason worked. Since he loved where he worked and what he did, the prospect of losing that was costing Jason a lot of sleep. Mickey was aware there were things happening at Jason's work lately, secret things, causing a lot of stress for her husband. She didn't like that. She even experienced a measure of empathetic stress because that's just the kind of person she was, especially where her husband was concerned. She did her best to create a happy, quiet home where Jason could come and relax, hoping this was only a passing phase and was something that would resolve itself soon. When Jason told his buddy Dennis about the conversation with Kenji, he was surprised Jason roared back at Kenji like he did, yet at the same time not surprised at all, since he knew Jason wasn't the kind of guy you could push around. Still, knowing this conversation had happened and knowing the Admiral was due to arrive at the facility soon caused Dennis stress of his own. As he came nearer and nearer to the Midway Magnetic Facility, Kenji decided he needed to approach this situation strategically. For the time being, he still needed Dr. Marsalis and his knowledge of the portal. But soon, at a time of his own choosing, he would take the necessary steps to eliminate this threat to national security. There was no doubt in his mind. Jason had to be eliminated. For the good of the country. In whatever way was necessary. Dealing with this situation called for a plan. Kenji had to come up with a tactic which would net him all he wanted, including the removal of this particular thorn in his side. But how? What would be the best plan? While descending in his car down the cement-lined hydraulic elevator shaft, Kenji had a brainstorm regarding how to deal with this idiot who dared to trifle with Admiral Kenneth Grant Brinstock. How? By putting on a nice smile, treating him like there was no problem at all, perhaps even making nice with an apology for how he came across on the phone. That should do it. That would make this Poindexter lower his guard, putting himself in the perfect position for Kenji to lower the hammer. When exactly that would happen wasn't immediately apparent, but Kenji would know when it came. Yes, he would be nice to Jason. He would be his buddy. The elevator platform finally came to rest on the underground parking garage level, and Kenji's driver pulled the car forward into the first available spot. It didn't matter to him that the spaces were numbered, and this one was set aside for someone else. Once parked, Kenji could see out the front window that Diana Olaney, Jason Marsalis, and Dennis Green were waiting for him. While he was still behind the privacy tinting of the car window, Kenji looked in the flip-down mirror and practiced his smile. He put on his best grandpa face, so he could be as disarming as possible. When his driver opened the car door, Kenji got out and started walking toward the waiting three.
"Hi, guys. Good to see you again,"
was his syrupy and overly dramatic salutation. Since Diana was also familiar with Jason's telephone altercation with Kenji, all three of them were ready for Hurricane Brinstock to blow through the parking garage. The fact that Kenji was not only not antagonistic, but actually friendly to the nth degree, caused the hair on the necks of all three to stand on end. Jason could actually hear Dennis almost imperceptibly say, "Uh-oh, danger, Will Robinson," under his breath. This had the unintended but well-timed effect of making Jason chuckle, which caused Kenji to believe his ruse of being friendly was working. Instantly realizing the timeliness of his chuckle, Jason decided to go with it. "Admiral, good to see you. I trust you had a pleasant drive up here?"
"It was fine, Jason. And you know what? Why don't you just call me Kenji like the rest of the higher-ups in Washington do?"
"Fair enough, Kenji," said Jason. "I trust you remember our Director of Research, Diana Olaney?" As Kenji turned to address Diana, Jason wondered what the Admiral was up to. The last time they were on the phone, Jason could feel the icy bullets sailing through the telephone lines. Now the Admiral was playing the part of the happy-go-lucky grandpa, so obvious a flea would know he was hiding something. But what?
"Yes, of course, I remember, Diana. How have you been doing?"
asked Kenji. Diana had been taken back by the Admiral's disposition. She wasn't as subtle with her surprise at the demeanor he was displaying. For a moment she wondered if perhaps Jason had read him wrong and he wasn't the jerk Jason described. Yet a very big part of her knew this guy was probably more politician than military tactician these days, although being a military tactician could account for the approach he was taking. It would be in his best interests to play nice with her two-star physicists. That's when the fog cleared for Diana, and she came to the same conclusion as Jason and Dennis. This guy was playing her, and he was playing Jason and Dennis too. That's when she realized the Admiral was probably pretty stupid to think he could get away with this with either Jason or Dennis. Still, there was probably an agenda on his mind, so whatever that was, it would be better to play along and wait for him to reveal his cards. "I've been doing just fine, Kenji. Thank you for asking," replied Diana. Kenji got a serious look on his face.
"I told Dr. Marsalis he could call me Kenji, but I don't recall telling you that."
Jason thought to himself, "Geez, what a dope." A concerned look flashed across Diana's face. She knew he was just pouring on more syrup and hoping to get a rise out of her, so she played along. After 2 seconds of supposedly allowing her to get scared, he pointed at her with both fingers.
"Ah, gotcha,"
followed by a belly laugh. Commensurate laughs came from all three, who knew their parts in this script of stupidity. Satisfied that he had broken the ice with these brain-drained lackeys, Kenji suggested,
"How about we go get comfortable? I have some things I need to discuss about the you-know-what."
More grandpa-isms. After Kenji had turned his back, Diana looked at Jason and Dennis, making a magnanimous gesture of sticking her index finger down her throat and silently pantomiming retching. It was all Jason and Dennis could do to keep from heaving forth their own belly laughs. What that did was confirm all three of them were on the same page. While descending down the elevator, they made small talk about the local bed and breakfast where the Admiral stayed and some of the sights that could be enjoyed locally, eventually making it to Diana's office where they could speak confidentially. Only now did the three notice Kenji had brought along a manila folder. Shutting the door, the four of them sat down in the living room-like area of her office. There were 2 opposing couches and comfortably wide chairs on either end. A large coffee table and an area rug rounded out the sitting area quite nicely. Kenji was the first to speak.
Now that we can be assured there aren't any prying ears, we can speak more freely about the portal. How have things been going with it? Any new discoveries since I left last time?
He asked. Long before Kenji arrived, Diana, Jason, and Dennis reached a unanimous conclusion. The little tidbit of information that the portal allowed not only viewing of past events, but also the transportation of matter, even people, to any place they chose, needed to stay secret for the time being. Even with that being the case, there was still a great deal to tell the Admiral about.
Plenty, actually. We've been watching things like the tearing down of the Berlin Wall, a few famous speeches, and the other day we saw Paul Revere make his famous ride,
said Dennis enthusiastically.
Wow, that's something I wouldn't mind seeing myself someday.
Then a serious cloud came over his face as though something was seriously troubling him.
Unfortunately, something else is of grave concern right now that almost nobody knows about. The 3 of you have the highest possible security clearance. In fact, your security clearance is at a level others don't know even exists. I know I can trust you guys with what I'm about to reveal. Even so, I need to say this for the record. What I'm about to discuss is level 1 top secret. You aren't to reveal this material to anybody, okay?
All 3 nodded and gave their verbal agreement.
Okay. Basically, I have 2 things to discuss. The first has to do with Yellowstone National Park.
The Admiral told Diana and the 2 scientists about the impending extinction-level event due to occur at Yellowstone sometime in the next 2 months. He explained how massive the eruption was predicted to be, and how there wouldn't be any survivors left once it happened. Up to this point, the reactions of all 3 were manufactured in response to being wary over the Admiral's syrupy demeanor. But with the disclosure of this information, their reactions were now genuine. To say they were all shaken by the news would be an understatement. Jason immediately thought about Mickey and little Jace. He envisioned how they would be. At that point, he shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He was shaken, all right. Shaken to his core. Dennis wasn't married and had no kids, but he did have family. He was traveling down the same mental road Jason was, and had to arrest his trip lest he fall apart at the prospect of the imminent death of those closest to his heart. Diana was numb. Unfortunately, she hadn't arrested her mental progression down that pathway like Jason and Dennis had, so she was feeling the horror of potentially losing not only her husband, but also her son and 2 daughters. She was holding it together, but it was a Herculean task. Satisfied he had terrified them enough to work unreservedly on the task at hand, he continued,
I'm really sorry to dump this on you, but it reinforces the urgency of the task I have in mind for you. If it works, then we just might have a chance of survival.
The 3 of them straightened up in their respective seats, more than eager to hear how they could help avert such a disaster.
Before I tell you what my plan is, though, I need to tell you about another top-secret thing playing into this,
said the Admiral.
We have made a recent discovery off the coast of Florida. When I tell you about it, your first reaction will be to not believe it, to think I'm pulling your leg. That was my reaction anyway. Let me assure you ahead of time, what I'm about to tell you is not only very true, but very real. Understand?
Again, all 3 nodded their heads. Kenji noticed their eyes were wide as saucers, and they were hanging on his every word.
Okay, remember, I warned you.
Drawing a deep breath, he began to speak.
Off the coast of Florida, right smack dab in the middle of what a lot of people call the Bermuda Triangle, is an island which has never been mapped before. There's good reason for that. It hasn't been mapped because...
The Admiral paused, his eyes darting between the three people sitting before him.
It's an island that was created by an alien race of beings.
Kenji allowed that sentence to float around the room for a while. It took a few moments for it to sink in, but when it did, the eyes that couldn't get wider did. Jason looked at Dennis and Diana, then back at Kenji. Even though the Admiral said he wouldn't be joking, Dennis said the first thing that came to mind. "You're kidding, right?"
"No, my boy, I'm not kidding. I'm very serious."
"What do they look like?" asked Diana.
"Right now, not too good, since they're all dead. That's the problem,"
replied Kenji. "They're dead?" asked Diana, furrowing her brow. "How?" Kenji shook his head.
"We're not sure, and that's what I need you to find out."
Almost simultaneously, all three slumped in their chairs, realizing this was no joke, that the Admiral was serious. Eventually, Dennis asked, "While I'm incredibly disappointed, to say the least, to hear they're all dead, why do you say that's a problem?"
The answer to that question is related to why I told you about Yellowstone. On this island, there's a machine which supposedly has the ability to counteract the things that are happening in Yellowstone, but it isn't working.
"Wait," said Dennis. "You're telling me you want to take this alien machine, fly it over to Wyoming, and use it to tell the volcano in Yellowstone what it can go do with itself?"
"Not exactly," replied Kenji. "According to our expert on the island, the machine is stationary. She says it has the ability to tell the volcano what it can do with itself from over there."
Jason finally spoke up. "This is unbelievable."
"Believe it, son. It's as real as it gets, and in about 2 months things are going to get very real unless we do something about it. But now, with this thingamajig you two made..."
Kenji mentally patted himself on the back with how grandfatherly he could make himself sound to get these idiots to do his bidding.
"We might have a shot at doing whatever is necessary to save the American people."
"Don't you mean save the world?" asked Jason.
"Of course, son, of course."
Once again, Jason cringed at being called son by this arrogant, devious excuse for a human being. "So, what do you want us to do?" asked Diana.
"I need you guys to look back in time, see what killed them, and see what we can do to fix the machine. I'm not only flying blind in my daddy's airplane, right now I don't even know how to fly."
"So, you want us to get you more intel on these aliens, and how to fix the machine," replied Jason. It was a statement more than a question. "We're going to need the coordinates for the island." Reaching into his coat pocket, the Admiral pulled out a USB drive. Handing it to Jason, he explained,
"This contains all we have on the island, including the latitude and longitude. It has pictures of the island, even the skeletons, which are everywhere. Guard this with your life."
Taking the drive, Jason replied, "We will, Admiral."
"Hey, Jason, can I talk to you in private out in the hallway for a second?"
asked Kenji. "Sure," answered Jason. Internally, he told himself the same thing Dennis and Diana were saying to themselves. Oh boy, here it comes. Jason and Kenji stood up and walked to the door. After they closed it, Dennis and Diana looked at each other. She made like she was sticking her finger down her throat, and he chuckled and rolled his eyes. Outside in the hallway, the Admiral was gearing up for what he hoped would be an Oscar-worthy performance.
"Jason, I want to apologize for the way I conducted myself on the phone the other day. I was out of line, and, man to man, I want you to know I respect the way you take care of your family. I was married once, and it didn't take. I guess I should take some lessons from you."
Thank you, Admiral. I appreciate that, answered Jason. If he didn't know better, he would have thought that was almost a sincere apology. Almost. The Admiral stuck out his arm, and the two men shook hands. Afterward, they went back into Diana's office, where she and Dennis greeted them.
"Gentlemen and lady,"
said Kenji,
"I need to get back to the farm and let you get to work. Please burn as much midnight oil on this project as you can. The survival of every man, woman, and child depends on you getting us this information."
"We'll get right on it, Admiral," said Jason.
"I know you will,"
replied Kenji. Turning to leave, Diana escorted Admiral Brinstock back to his car, while Jason and Dennis remained behind. Without having to discuss it ahead of time, the two men stayed silent to make sure nothing they said would be heard by their recent guest. Once they were satisfied there was no way the Admiral was within earshot, the two of them relaxed and started speaking.
"Well, buddy,"
said Dennis,
"I knew working with you was going to be a ride, but I didn't expect to have the fate of all humankind resting on our shoulders. Can you believe this?"
"There's a lot of this I have a hard time wrapping my head around," said Jason. "But one thing I don't have a hard time with is knowing all that thingamajig and Sun performance was nothing but a load of manure. He's trying to play us like a fiddle."
"Sheesh, you said it.
He was pouring it on so thick I felt like I was going to get diabetes just listening to him." The two men chuckled loudly just as Diana was arriving back in her office. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Oh, just how thick he was pouring on the whole grandpa thing," answered Jason. "Geez, I know. I'm not kidding. I wanted to throw up the whole time," said Diana. "Yep," replied Jason. Getting a serious look on his face, he continued, "Although the way he said it stunk like a diaper, what he said was earth-shattering." "Good word for it," said Dennis. "We need to get on this." The two men left and made their way to the portal room. They hadn't had lunch yet, but weren't really hungry. Having the fate of all humanity on their shoulders made them more concerned with other things. Hey, fellow Galimarians, this is Dan Adrian, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to my book. If you can, please click like down below because it really helps me bring these videos to you and lets me know what you like. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and click on the bell so that you'll get notified when I release more chapters. If you have any questions about this or any other of my books, or if you want to know more about what it takes to write a novel like this one, please make sure you leave your question in the comments below. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.